Hi, my name is Will English with English Management Solutions. We are a reseller here in San Diego, and we specialize in QuickBooks Point of Sale. I've developed a series of tutorials to help you get the most use out of your product. I hope you enjoy. Today's topic is taking a physical inventory in QuickBooks Point of Sale. You can see our contact information below, so if you'd like more information, please get a hold of us. Let's go through the agenda. We're going to go through some terminology concepts, also planning for the inventory, manually adding counts. We're going to talk about the physical inventory scanner that you can buy to use with QuickBooks Point of Sale, and using that, we'll go in product and show you some parts and pieces of that. And lastly, we'll finish up with if you have a multiple location retailer, how you want to work with that. Okay, so the overview is that there are three methods of taking a physical inventory. First, you can do it manually. What that involves is printing a worksheet inside the software, going around and physically counting everything in the store, and doing check marks or whatever you're going to do, and then bring it back to the system and put your counts in. The second way, and way we recommend, is to use a physical inventory scanner. That allows you to walk around the store, scan tags, upload quantities, and put them into the software automatically. Lastly would be a combined method. Now, one thing to note when you're using the combined method is you want to make absolutely certain that you are separating out those things that you're counting manually from those things that you're counting with the scanner. The reason for that is that if you count something manually and also count it with the scanner, it will not add those counts together. However, if you count something with the scanner, you find that other item somewhere else, it will go ahead and add those together. Okay, so how often should a count be done? At least once a year, if not more often. You're going to need a physical inventory value for taxes and other purposes. So at a minimum, you want to talk about once a year. Also, why would you want to do a physical inventory? Well, think about it. You want to find out if things are going missing in the store. Did you realize that over 60% of all theft in a location is internal, meaning employees are taking inventory from you? There's a variety of reasons for that, but that's just the truth. So by taking a physical inventory, you're able to capture that and have actionable information. Let's talk about terminology. So what do we mean by a full physical count? That means that we're touching every single piece of product and we're doing a count and we're uploading those into the system. Let's talk about cycle counts. So a cycle count means that I'm going to count just a section of the store. For example, let's say that I want to do a cycle count every month. I'll divide the store into 12 separate sections, and then I will count each of those sections once a month. That allows me to kind of keep an eye on things without doing a full physical count. The physical inventory is either of those, either a cycle count or the physical count. Freezing activity, what we're talking about there is that while we're undertaking the inventory count, we don't want to be receiving any new inventory or ideally selling inventory. There is a way in QuickBooks Point of Sale of freezing and tracking changes after you've started your physical inventory. And when we jump in product, we'll show you how to do that. Keep in mind that we're only going to count inventory items and assemblies. Those are the only items that actually have a physical quantity inside a point of sale. So it makes sense non-inventory service and group items are not going to be counted. Why you want to plan for your inventory? It should be pretty obvious, but it's pretty expensive, especially if you decide to shut the store down. You're paying for staff, either your staff or external staff. You're going to also need supplies, and you want to make sure that you have those available to you before you start. And you need to account for the fact that there's a disruption to your business. So again, the method is, are we going to do a manual count, or are we going to do a count with the inventory scanner? Also, which staff are we going to use? Are we going to use our own staff, which have familiarity with all of the inventory, or are we going to hire an outside company? And lastly, how do we want to schedule this? Are we going to schedule this for a time where the store is closed, or are we going to stay open and just kind of deal with it as it goes along? So things to consider when you're planning is to make sure that you have all the supplies you need. For example, if you're using little dots to mark tags for those things that you've counted, which is one method that we use, make sure that you have plenty of the little dots. Also, you need to make sure that you have enough of the extra tags if tags get damaged or what have you. You need to train the staff on how to actually do the physical count, and you need to make sure that they know how to upload those into the system. So, are you really ready to count? You need to make sure that you know where everything in your inventory is. I actually had a client who stored inventory in the bathroom. I thought that was kind of gross, but hey, who's to say? So you want to make sure that you've located every place that you have inventory. Had another client that had a bin out back, so we want to make sure that we know where all the inventory is. You want to make sure that you're accounting for anything that might be on display. Also, if you need to receive items, do that before you count them. Nothing's worse than going ahead and counting items that you have not received in yet, and then receiving them, which would double the count on those. Also, if you've got any sort of samples or anything like that, or consignment inventory, how are you tracking that? You want to make sure that you're accounting for that, or not, depending on how that you're tracking the inventory. Lastly, if you're using the basic point of sale product, and you have things on layaway or sales orders, how are you accounting for those? All right, so let's talk about manually adding counts. We're going to go ahead and run the physical inventory worksheet and show you what that looks like. In order to print a physical inventory worksheet, we actually have to start the inventory process. To do that, we click under Inventory, Start Physical Inventory. Since we're in a multi-store environment, it pops up and asks us which store that we want to take inventory in. I'm going to go ahead and choose my main headquarters store, store number 1, and click OK. This drops us into the workbook, and simply if I'm going to be changing my counts manually, I would click into the counted field and I would just add them there. I'll show you how to do that after we show you how to print the physical inventory worksheet. This can be pretty convoluted though if I need to go back to the computer and back and forth to be able to do my counts. So to avoid that problem, I'm going to print a worksheet. To do so, I click on the little drop-down arrow next to the print, and I choose PI Worksheet for Current Item View. Now note that I have all of my items listed here, but perhaps I want to filter to give me just a certain number of departments. I click under All Items, Create Filter. I go down to my department. I click on the little icon here. I'm going to go ahead and choose Dresses and Accessories, so I click all of those, click OK, click Apply. Now you can see that I have a filtered view, and I go ahead and print that. Click on the drop-down, PI Worksheet for Current Item View, and then it brings up my workbook, listing out all of the various items. Now a best practice would be that we would remove this expected column. The reason for that is human nature. Oftentimes, if I show the expected of being 2 or 3, and human nature, the employee would just write in a 3 and call it a day. So if there's no expected count, it kind of forces them to go around and make sure that they've counted everything. To remove the expected column, I go under the I want to, add or remove columns, and uncheck expected. Save that. Now this is a worksheet that I can print. I can hand to my employee to go around and count the store. Once they've done that and they come back to me with the sheet, the next step is for me to actually go in and do my counts. So for example, I'm going to go in and say that I have 3 of these and 2 of those and 4 of those, etc., etc. Notice that it now changes the difference quantity because I had none expected. Another thing to note is I also started my physical inventory as of this date and time. Therefore, if I were to go and say save and continue, it's going to go ahead and save that. And so I can go and print out the next sheet, etc. When I'm ready to apply all of my changes, I want to make sure that 2 things. I have to set the counter worksheet to all items, and then I want to come down here and say set all items not counted to 0. What that does then is if I didn't count it and I had a quantity, it's going to make that 0. That's the most important part of this, is once you're certain that you've counted everything, you want to check that box and then click apply changes to inventory. It's just that simple. So back to our PowerPoint. Once you've run the inventory worksheet, you can use it. The other thing to consider is that if for some reason that you want to, you can move the report into Excel, and you can change the size of fonts. You can also add some additional lines in case there are things that didn't show up. So we talked about adding to the counted column, and you want to make sure that when you're doing this, that you capture all of the items. The problem with the hand count is that if I have 5 items, let's say, on the floor and 3 items in the warehouse, I have to make sure that I've counted all 8 items and change the quantity to 8. I can't go in and say 5 here, save it, and then expect that it'll know that the 3 later are part of that, giving me 8. That's not the case with the physical inventory scanner. One of the reasons that we prefer it. Other thing is to consider is multiple units of measure. So the idea is that if you have a case of something and you sell it by the each, multiple unit of measure is a very useful feature that Point of Sale has. We'll have a YouTube tutorial on that, but everything is counted in the base unit. So what that means is if I have a case of 12 and I have 2 on the floor, I want to make sure that I put 14 on my worksheet and not 1 case and 2. So you can run reports after you've chosen save and continue or apply changes. 2 different reports are applicable here. The first report is the differences report. What that shows us is those items where the quantities changed, and then you can run an overall inventory, physical inventory worksheet. Again, I can't stress enough that you want to make sure that before you apply changes, that you set all items not counted to 0 by checking that box. So let's talk about what happens if I'm doing a physical inventory and the store is still open. The first is to just track those things separately, like on a little tick mark or whatever, and then go back later and change the quantities as needed. The second is that if you actually go in and start the physical inventory process and you change one of the items, let's say you have an item that has a 0 count, you go ahead and put a 0 in the expected, you save and continue. What that does is it sets a flag, and that flag will allow us to go back later and see those items that have changed. So you have the ability to look at items that have changed and make the adjustments. Now, let's say that I counted 5 and I sold 1, so my new count should be 4. It won't automatically adjust that count to 4. However, it will flag the items so that you can go back and make that adjustment yourself. This will conclude part 1 of our physical inventory tutorial. In part 2, we will continue with the PowerPoint, showing you the screen options, and also get into using the physical inventory scanner and why you'll see that this is my preferred option.